live, this recording, this interview goes to the four corners of the earth. So today we have a lady, as I said earlier on, she is absolutely phenomenal. She is an educator, she is a mentor, and she is an empowerer of young lives. Now, I couldn't think of anything better to do, honestly, because you see, when you impact a child's life in their young age, you have shaped their destiny. You have shot them with an arrow from the hip right to the target called life and doing it well. So I'm going to allow Susie to introduce herself, tell us a little bit about herself, and the interview will get. So Susie, welcome. Let us give her some hearts, please, just to welcome her. Welcome.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me, Bella. Can you?
I certainly can. I can hear you loud and clear.
Excellent.
Loud and clear. Excellent. Excellent. We're glad to have you. Susie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. I'm really happy to be here. Honestly, there's nothing that gives me more joy than to just work with young people. So I am Susie Wangari. I am Kenyan. I'm a child of God. I'm a teacher at heart, and actually a teacher by profession. So I'm assistant principal in a secondary school in London. I have been in education for over 16 years. I have gone from being a classroom teacher to being a head of year, and then now as assistant principal. And so I feel really blessed to have been through that journey. But I'm also a mentor, and I call myself a mother to many. Just because when you work with young people, they're your kids. So they may belong to somebody else, but actually they're also your kids. So I call them my children, and I am a co-parent to a lot of parents who entrust me with the young people. Yeah, that's me, really.
Fantastic. You know, as everyone in the world knows, I am a proud mother of an amazing son. I have 2 adopted children who just fill me with nothing but joy. But, you know, when my son was in school, every year I would, at the end of the school year, I would celebrate the teachers. The reason being, I once had a party. He was 5. I had a party, and I invited all his classmates to the house. It was a big mistake. First of all, I couldn't control the children. I don't know how teachers actually tell kids line up, and they actually know that they're supposed to form a line. And I give big respect to people in your capacity. And I've often said that I am so glad God did not call me to teach, because I think that I would have, you know, I don't know, I would not have made a good job of it, because it takes not only patience and kindness, but love. It takes a lot of love for the lives. And you know, the respect I have for you, Susie, and people in your capacity is the impact that you have on the lives of the children, of the teenagers that come into your world. I remember to this day the words my teachers spoke. I remember, and it's interesting how when we go to school, or when we send our children to school, we do not really understand that when they're outside the care of the parent, they're in the care of someone who can make them or break them. And so tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you come into education, and what was it, something that, you know, like, from a young age, were you like babysitting other people's kids and just knew, well, you know what, I'm going to be working in somewhere that I would impact lives? Tell us a little bit about your journey from Kenya all the way to the United Kingdom, and how you came to do what you're doing today.
Yeah, so my journey is something that I think deep down I was born with, because I always knew that I don't want to work with machines. I don't want to work with, you know, gadgets or anything like that. I wanted to work with people. I just didn't know that there would be young people. However, I grew up in a family that was really loving. I had a great mom who used to be a primary school teacher, and then she became a businesswoman, and a dad who used to be a banker and then became a businessman. And I had extended family, my uncles, my aunties. So I was always surrounded by people who really cared for me. And then over time, I developed a real interest in church where I would teach Sunday school. When I was in high school, I would teach the younger children. And I used to really enjoy it. And I would feel really alive just being among the children that I was teaching. And then later on, I chose, so in Kenya, when you finish high school, you choose a university and you choose what the course you want to do. So I wanted to be a lawyer and I wanted to go into tourism, but I got Bachelor's of Education as the degree that I was chosen to go and do.
Wow.
And I was like, you know what, I don't feel like I want to do Bachelor's of Education, because at that point, it wasn't like regarded as major, like everybody wanted to be something like a doctor, an engineer, something that was seen to be better. So in my heart, I just thought, well, I don't want to do that really. So I spoke to my mom, and my mom told me, this is the thing though. My mom actually said to me, let me go and find out about this. Let me find out what it looks like, and then you make your decision. So she came back and she said to me, I think you should just go ahead and do it, because it has a lot of avenues that you can explore, and then you can change and become whatever you want after that. So I thought to myself, you know what, mom has spoken. And the thing I really liked about my mom, which I still use to date, is she did not tell me, go and do this. She actually advised me and then allowed me to make a decision. So I then went ahead, did my Bachelor's of Education. Then I came here to do a master's in Aberdeen, which was freezing cold because Kenya is really hot. So it was really cold, but I finished my master's and then I came here to London because at that point I knew I wanted to go into teaching. One of my friends said to me, why don't you try another different career? And I said, actually, no, I want to go into teaching. So I went into teaching, and because they could hire unqualified teachers, so to speak, because my degree was from Kenya, this was a great country and a great city to be in. So I went in, and I remember going into class, and let me tell you, it was daunting. It was tough,
Wow.
because I'm short. I'm not even 5 foot. I'm 4'11". So it was really difficult. But you know what? I knew that I love this thing, because these kids are alive. They're bringing their whole personality with themselves to me. And I had to then go back to my roots and what my mom used to say and the community in Kenya used to say, which is, you know what, just be confident, bring yourself into the game, and you will succeed. And that's what I did. And then of course I also teach it in church in terms of youth mentorship, and I just love it. So that's really my journey. That's how I got here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined while she was talking. If I haven't welcomed you, I can see Peter Farrell, Onome. Please, guys, do me a major favor tonight. We have an amazing and a phenomenal woman in the house, and I just want her story to be heard. She's a better woman in her own right, a woman that wears the crown of mentorship. It's something that's really close to my heart, because I had good mentors around me growing up and people who spoke life. So it's very important to hear someone who's sitting in that driving seat, shaping the next generation of leaders, as in the person of Susie Wangari, who we are hosting today, an educator, a mentor, and an empowerer of young people. So Susie, I mean, now you've come to the UK, you've answered the call on your life, which didn't seem like what you had wanted to do, and you were courageous enough to step into that place. You're now in the classroom. What challenges did you face? Did you ever have moments where you were like, I'm not really sure this is what I should have done, or hang on a minute, am I actually going to thrive in this? Am I going to make success of it? Were there moments of doubt? What was it like when you answered that call?
It's deep down, I've always known my purpose is young people. So that was very settled in my heart. I knew that this is what I wanted to do, and this is what I have been called to do. However, it was tough. And the reason why it was tough is because coming from a background where the values are slightly different in terms of community. So the Kenyan community, the children respect the elders, but also the children are quite subdued, at least when I was in Kenya, when I was growing up. And coming to a society where children are outspoken and they are what I would say in your face. That's the, like they're all over in your face. Yeah. They're courageous. They'll come at you. Sometimes on the negative as well. They have no problem showing you who they are. And I remember, for example, I went to a school because when I started, I used to do what we call supply teaching, where you go and the teacher is absent and you go and you're the substitute teacher. And you walk in and you just have kids you don't know, and you have work that has been set by somebody else. And I remember thinking to myself, these kids they're not listening. And then they're not bothered. You're there, but you might as well not be there. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know whether you know Sister Act 2, the movie, and there's this kind of school that is like that. So I remember thinking to myself, okay, what do I do? And it was a matter of confidence, because you have to make them listen, but actually want to listen. So you do get challenges with behavior from the children, lack of motivation, parents not completely understanding what it is that you're doing or trying to do with the student. Sometimes the system is also quite difficult to navigate in terms of curriculum, in terms of trying to get your head around what you're supposed to do. But did I ever at one point think of quitting? No. What I did though is I just kept saying to myself, you've got to develop yourself and you've got to understand this whole system, and then you will succeed. So that's always been what I've told myself, and getting support from people, my community of other colleagues and my parents and anybody else who knows me. So that's in answer to your question. Yeah,
that's amazing. So Susie, you touched briefly on behavior. Having raised a teenager, it's like they all take a pill at 13 that sends them off on a tangent. And you nurture potential within your niche is teenage. So we're going to talk a little bit about the specific works, sharing some of your success stories. But I just wanted to talk firstly about when you have a teenager. It's a period where for 99% of parents it's difficult, because I think children are beginning to realize, hey, mommy and daddy doesn't know everything, because at a young age they think, oh, my parents know the world, and then they begin to define their individuality. When does a parent need to be concerned that my kid is not just being a teenager? At what point it may not be a specialization for behavioral issues, but at what point do you think, this is not just, is it that teenagers just get bored? Is it that a lot of them are like the way they are because they're not stimulated enough? Can you touch on a little bit? Because I'm sure there are parents who are wondering, like, my teenager is off their mind, so can you help us as someone in that space understand how to help parents navigate those teenage years successfully?
Yeah, and that's a question that I get a lot, because like you just said, when you're younger, or when a child is younger, the greatest influencer is the parent. And I think that's to do with age, that's to do with the proximity of the parent when they're younger. But what then tends to happen when they're older is that they start becoming more independent, they grow a bit more, and they're starting to think for themselves. And so there's a shift that happens with their growth, with their mind, and with the influencers around them. So the shift happens whereby they listen more to their peers, they listen more to other things, and they don't seem to always listen to the parent the way they used to do before. But I always say that's a normal thing, because you wouldn't want to raise somebody who's not then becoming more independent and their own person. And part of teenagehood is growth. So when they challenge whatever the system, they challenge your system as a parent, they challenge the system that is in school, and they challenge any other system, that is actually a symbol of growth. And sometimes the way they present it, because they're still young, may not be exactly what we would want to see. So they sometimes do things that are wrong and have to be corrected, and sometimes they do things because they have that energy and the zeal, and we misunderstand them and we don't know exactly what to do. But what I do know is that at the end of the day, there are certain things that you look for where to see that the teenagehood is not, I guess, spiraling out of control to become something that is negative. Yeah. And one of the things that you look at is just your child. You know your child. As a parent, if you're an intentional, involved parent, you will know your child. So the minute you start seeing that my child used to be really maybe very chatty, and now they're reclusive, they're quiet, you don't know what's happening there, it may be a sign that something is happening, because you know, sometimes that silence, you know, that is so drastic, the change between either you're very chatty and suddenly you're not, or you're not very chatty and suddenly you have this rudeness coming up and everything. It's good to explore those things. But the other thing that you need to look at is who are their peers? Because those are their greatest influencers, or one of their greatest influencers. Yeah. Who are they? Who's the company that your child is keeping? What are their parents like? Do you know where they stay? Do you understand their values? Because the minute you start seeing the values of your child changing, so your child used to be respectful, used to take responsibility, and suddenly they're not, you need to be looking at what is this company they're keeping, because I believe in the Bible, and what it says is bad behavior corrupts good morals. Yeah. So when you look at that, then it will tell you a lot. The other thing is just looking at their physical appearance. Are they unkempt? Do they look like they're shabby in terms of they don't care. They don't care about themselves. They don't take pride in anything. What's going on? So you want to explore some of those things so that you can understand whether they are behavior issues or their teenage issues. Because if they're behavior issues, then you deal with that differently from if they're teenagers. Yes. So it's a very fine balance, because you have to keep seeing the changes and seeing how far they are veering to be able to know exactly what to do.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone who's joining. We're having an exciting conversation with the indomitable. I call her, you know, because she's a force to be reckoned with. The amazing. If you meet Susie in person, you wouldn't know she has so much power within her, because she's quite petite, she's so sweet. But this woman is carrying power because she's impacting the next generation of leaders. And with us tonight, guys, we have this amazing woman, an empowerer of youth. She nurtures potential. Now, Susie, tell me a little bit. Share, guys. If you're just trying to share this live, I just want the world to hear it. She works, and her niche is within the teenage years. So she works as an assistant principal, if you're just joining, and she is doing amazingly well as a mentor. Susie, tell me a little bit about potential. You see, the thing is, I went to school and I did very good in academics. I was just that good girl, you know. However, I know people who really hated school, and it might be a number of things, maybe their home setting, maybe lack of attention in terms of teachers not being able to understand them at an intimate level, and they've gone on into adulthood to thrive. I've heard people say, I never even knew I had the potential I've come to discover. And what a shame, you know, teachers could have identified that. So tell us, what does potential look like? Because a parent out there might be struggling with their child and not even being able to identify, because they're kids who are gifted and creative and vocational and may not be really academic. But please help us understand, how does a parent identify? You nurture, you carve out, you mine potential, and you let kids evolve into the best version of adults that they could ever be. So help us. How do you identify potential?
Wow, that's a good question, because I think what I believe is that every person who is born and is in this world, as long as you're breathing, you've got potential, because you have something within you that you're born with. I believe that there is purpose in everybody. There's a reason why you are in this world. And so that's the foundation where it comes to potential. In terms of identifying what that looks like, it really has to come down to creating relationships and really valuing the person as that person is. So when it comes to teenagers, and you are right, I work with a lot of teenagers in terms of mentoring, whether they are my relatives, whether they are my students, or whether they are other kids who parents bring to me. And one of the things that you will notice about young people is they're very raw. They're like a bit like raw material, because they come to you just as they are, and there's so much you can do with it. So when you think about leather, for example, you get it as a raw piece of material, but if you refine it and you start doing things to it, you can make different products out of it. And that's what happens. So when you're a teacher, when you're a mentor, when you're somebody who works with young people, the first thing you do is you recognize the fact that that young person in front of you has a future, but the future is going to be directed by you, who is the adult, because young people are on a journey. So you are a bit ahead of that journey, and you can see a bit farther than they can see. So you have to stand there and say to yourself, I believe in you for you. Whether you believe in it yourself, whether you recognize it yourself, I recognize it for you. I know you'll be powerful. I know you will do well. And then from there, you have to then start unpacking what it is that they bring. So, for example, I've got students and young people who are extremely challenging because they have this courage and this almost a go-getter attitude, where they don't think about danger and they don't think about the next step. The first thing that somebody might think of doing is, I'm going to punish this, I'm going to stifle that. But actually, we shouldn't, because if you're that courageous, then I need to be able to direct you to maybe a club, maybe an activity that will use that aspect of your personality in a positive way. So when you're looking at the personality of a child or a teenager, you've got to look at them and see the one who's really, forthright and very extrovert, and you channel that towards that side. So they can do debating, they can do poetry, they can do acting, they can do drama. There's so much they can do. But then you have the other side who are a bit more introverted, and you want to look at them and say, when they're introverted and they're quiet, sometimes we might think, oh, you know what? They're very nice. They don't need anything. They don't bother us. But then the potential within them is not sometimes recognized or realized, because they're too quiet. So what you then do is you try and make them come out of their shell without changing that personality. So you can still say, what are you interested in? And you bring out that in them, and you look at how they can network, how they can build their confidence, how they can go into places where that personality also really works for them. So I think it's just really with potential, because you don't know what it is and where they can get to at the end. The whole point is you're the solid person. They'll go off, they come back, they find you solid. You know, they try things, they fail, they find you that you're solid and you can give them that direction. And what I've seen is that the balance between guidance and discipline is what is needed to make sure that that potential actually goes where it's supposed to be. So it's about looking at them, supporting them, but also teaching them how to have discipline, how to have boundaries, and what to do when they need support or when they get in trouble. I don't know whether that's answering your question.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's even taking me back to raising my son and what I could have done better, actually. So that being said, you know, I was talking to a parent this week, and this parent found themselves in a situation where the child was dictating a lot. And I know we are in a society where kids, especially when they get into their teenage years, they're encouraged to have a voice. Do you know what I mean? As someone who mentors teenagers, I know that if you give too much of a heavy hand, and I think this just kind of like Robert stamps what you were saying earlier, if you give too much of a heavy hand, they might just become a recluse, they might curl up, it might dry up that fountain of creativity, it might affect their ability to thrive. And if you give too much of a loose rope, then the child might just go off on a tangent. So what's a fair leverage? You know, now I'm not talking even about harnessing potential in raising a child, you know, because some parent out there might be listening and thinking, you know, when you're raising a kid under the age of 10, you are the parent who says, you know, brush your teeth, go to bed, you go to bed at this time, do your homework. And then when kids get into that teenage year, sometimes, you know, they take greater responsibility. I'm writing my second book now called Black Dad Power, where I'm talking about the milestones to manhood and the different phases where a boy evolves into a man. And, you know, there comes a point when you even have to give them house keys. You have, you know, that transition from primary school to secondary school, they start commuting on their own. So there's a measure of responsibility on their shoulders, and that you push them into areas of being a little bit more responsible than just knowing that, you know, pie falls from the sky. So in terms of leverage, when do you actually give a teenager the autonomy to start making life decisions?
I think, you know, what I've noticed is this. I look back, like you were saying, so I look back and I think to how my mom raised me and how my dad raised me, and just how people around me when I was growing up in terms of teachers in school also raised me. And what I realized is that the first thing is that you as the adult, the parent or the educator that's working with young people, is you have to know yourself. Because the minute you know who you are, then you're able to project that to whoever you're dealing with. So I'll give you an example. When I said I walk into a class, I'm short, these kids are 6 foot tall, some of the boys are really tall. The minute you don't have the confidence within yourself that, you know what, I am the teacher. Yeah, this is my space. It's our space, but I'm in charge of this space. So you've got to have that within yourself. And it's not by what you say, it's the way you carry yourself. It's that knowing that this is me, this is my call, I'm here because I'm in charge, but I'm also here because you've got to succeed. So I'm not doing this because I want to punish you, or I want certain other, you know, recognition, or I want to have power over you. I'm not asserting myself because of those reasons. I'm asserting myself because I'm here to make sure that you succeed and you become the best that you can be. So as a parent, it's the same thing. Once you know, these are our values, this is how we live in this space, this is what I want to give to the world in future, because you're the one as a young person who will become the president and the policymaker of the future. So I'm releasing something that I want to thrive in that future. So once you recognize yourself in that way, then you start recognizing as well that the child starts to resonate with that. And then what then you have to do is think to yourself, what can I do to make sure that I'm giving, allowing my child to be independent and allowing my child to make mistakes as well. So I think what I'm saying there is that when I say a child is, let me think, you're 13. So 13 years in the UK is around year 8. That child can do certain tasks, but they, like you said earlier, they can even take care of a younger sibling. So you can allow them to do that within reason because of the age. But then when they're older, when they're 14, 15, then you can give them a bit more. However, what I've noticed is, like you said, you were asking earlier, teenagers who will argue they don't like a certain thing and they're always bashing against the person in terms of the boundaries. They're pushing the boundaries. The reason they do that is because they will test you. So I have noticed in my lessons. So today, for example, I had a student who I was teaching in my last lesson, but I was on duty before that lesson. And when I was going around the school as a teacher on duty, I met this girl more than once. She wasn't in the lesson. So when she came to my lesson, she came on time, and I said to her, by the way, you're never late to this lesson, but you were hanging around out there when I was on duty, and I had to direct you to go to lesson. Why is that? And she said to me, it's because I'm scared of you. So I said, define that. What do you mean you're scared of me? And she said, it's because, miss, I know you'll give me a detention, and I don't like detentions. So I said, so a detention is where you keep a student after school in their own time to have a conversation about what has gone wrong behavior-wise. So I said, are you scared of the fact that I'll give you a detention, or are you scared of the fact that you're 100% sure that I will make sure that I enforce that? She said, yeah, because you will always make sure that you enforce the discipline, the punishment if I'm late. So then I asked her, what's the difference between somebody who's strict and knows their boundaries and somebody who, an environment that is not strict and has no boundaries? And she said, well, in other places, I just don't learn. It's fun, but I don't learn anything. Do you see what I'm saying? So this child is telling you two things. It's telling you that if you don't enforce and if you don't correct the bad behavior, they might think they're having fun, but they also know that they're not thriving in that other situation. So you've got to correct the child. You've got to enforce. And I always say discipline is not a negative word. Punishment or discipline, they're not negative. You do have a space for that. It's just that do it out of a compassionate place, not out of anger, not out of revenge. Do it because you want the child to succeed.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. I could listen to you all day. I now feel like I want to go and be a supply teacher somewhere just to put some of these things to practice. Thank you so much, everyone who's just Thank you to those of you who are joining in. Phenomenal lady, amazing woman. Here we have with us today Susan Wangari. She's an acting principal in a school, but she's also a teen mentor, nurturing potential, helping kids define the future they want and giving them the tools to walk boldly into it. Susie, you run a mentorship program. How can people connect with you? What does that look like? I know outside school, you have a practice where you actually work with parents to ensure that their kids have the best experience through the teenage years. How do you do that? And what does the practice look like? Yeah, share a little bit about that.
So I have always mentored, like I said earlier, I have always been a mentor, but what I recently started doing from June 2023, I started a mentorship program that is called the Leading Teenager Mentorship Program. And I chose that title because there's one thing I've always known: you cannot lead other people until you lead yourself. I also believe that there's no way we should be waiting for our children to be 2021 before we instill certain things, you know. So for me, that's really something that is close to my heart, that a teenager needs to learn how to lead themselves so that in future they can lead others. And actually, not just in future, even now, they can lead others. Because there's so much opportunity in the world for young people to actually do something. So I started with a mentorship program, and what I do is I've got one that is group. I do group sessions, and it's on Zoom, it's online, and you know, there's the other one, which is a signature program where I do one-to-one. So the one-to-one is 12 weeks, and I go through different topics, but the main topics around my mentorship program is the fact that we discuss who you are, your identity, how, and not just in terms of race, but who are you? What do you anchor your identity to? And then we look at goal setting. We look at mindsets in terms of looking at how you can be yourself without losing your teenagehood. How we go through networking skills. We go through what the current affairs are. Where is the teenager in this day and age? And then on top of that, I introduce them to different other people, because I've lived in Kenya. I live here. I've got a great network of global mentors, really, and people who can really input into those teenagers' lives. So that's what I do. And honestly, I have seen change in the young people that I work with, because they are able to see themselves in the eyes of God, in the eyes of the world, in the eyes of their community, and they're able to give back, and they're taking steps in the community. I'm seeing kids leading other kids.
Wow.
And so I feel, but at the same time, actually, I will say I've also seen them make mistakes with me. And one of the mistakes is you don't log in on time. So, or you don't show up for the session and you don't say why. So I'm like, why are you doing that? But to see somebody coming from, they don't log in for a session, to actually then having a conversation with me and then saying to them, do you understand that time is money? Do you understand about delayed gratification? All those things. The next time, they're the ones texting you and saying, oh, can we do it on this day because I have exams I'm reading for? That kind of thing. So you see change in every single time you meet this young person. I do it, if you want to connect with me, it is on my IG link. There's a link you can book to,
at the top,
me. Yeah, or you can DM me, ask me, and I will respond.
Fantastic. So, Susie, you've been in education, you said about 16 years. Tell us, you must have some success stories.
Yes.
Please share a few, your favorite ones, the ones that warm your heart when you look back. Because I think with every person that embarks on any career, one of the things you would want to do is to look back and say, I did good. You know what I mean? So share some success stories that you have in your treasure box.
Right. So let me tell you a story. So I was head of year. So a head of year is somebody who's in charge of a year group. So at the time I had 180 students. In year 9 I took them from year 8 to year 11. Wow. So when I took over in year 8, let me tell you, they were tough. They used to have suspensions. I mean, I had cases of students who were setting off the fire alarm. Some were jumping on toilet seats in school and breaking them. It was chaos. And I used to lead a group of a team of tutors. So because it lies on you as the head of year to make sure that year group succeeds academically, as people, you reduce the suspensions. I was like, what am I going to do with this? And this is where part of it is, the value of the people who you work with and how you nurture your own team of mentors to make sure that they're doing the right thing for the students. So fast forward to year 11, let me say to year 10 actually. So about 2 years later in year 10, they had no suspensions. And when they did their GCSEs in year 11, they had the best results in the history of that school at the time. And
Wow.
let me tell you, some of the most difficult kids, seeing them go through from year 8 to year 11 without what we call a permanent exclusion, so you don't kick them out of the system at all, was a reward in itself. I mean, even now, I think about that and I'm like, wow, that was amazing. But then the other example I have is among that year group, you've got students who are now, there's one student who won a BAFTA award for Young Rising Star of a drama, a movie that she did. I had another student who runs a huge charity and is an OBE at the moment. She was awarded an OBE. And then outside of my students, I've got somebody like my niece and nephew who I've mentored over time. They've gone all the way, they finished their studies, they're traveling the world and putting themselves out there. I've got other students who, not students, mentees. So the other day I had a mentee a young lady who's 13, and she wasn't confident at all. And the mom said to me, I cannot believe the difference that in this child between when you started and now. She's able to speak to the parent even more. She's putting herself out there. She's proud of who she is. I could go on and on. But honestly, the biggest win for me is the change in the young person, the belief that they have in themselves, and going out and suddenly not. And I'll give you one more example, which is a debate team. So I took a debate team to Slovenia, and they were competing. This is, these are children from inner city. They're not your posh child. And they went out there and they're debating against really top private schools, and they came second, and one of them they won. But the difference it makes to them, because they know it's not where you come from, it's actually who you are. You're human, and you're good, you can do well. And just seeing that and seeing how they just soar and they just fly. I mean, let me tell you, Bella, there's, even if I never got a penny out of this, that is enough reward.
That's fulfillment. It's amazing. I think Susie at that point deserves a lot of hearts. If you're enjoying this, if you appreciate what she's doing, because the work you're doing is impacting generations. It is, if I do well in life, I am setting a bar for my children, and I'm setting a space for them to thrive. And it's all about how they enter adulthood and what impact you would have had. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is the Better Woman Initiative, a place where women thrive, women blossom, and women live abundantly. I give you permission to answer the call of your purpose, no matter what you have been through. If you haven't followed me, if you've joined this live and you're not connected to me on Instagram, my name is up there somewhere on the left, Dolce_Bella. Please follow me, because every Thursday I bring great, successful women who are impacting our generation to the world. If you have joined and you do not know Susie, please follow her. She is amazing, as you have heard, and she's doing great in the space where she is, empowering kids to be the best version of themselves and to be the best version of adults that they could be. Susie, as we bring this interview to a close, what top 3 nuggets would you give for my Better Woman community? Because, I feel like 2 things after this interview. First off, I feel like going back to school and actually finding myself in your class, because I think you're just simply amazing. And then something in my head says, girl, that boat has long sailed. So I now feel like becoming a supply teacher somewhere. You see, the thing is, I'm so glad you're beginning to see the reward, because I've often thought about doing something in the educational space. I think when this month started, the Better Woman community themed the month of innovation. And it was an opportunity for people to look within themselves and begin to birth those dreams, those hidden gems of products and services as we prepare to enter the new year. And one of the challenges we had in the month was to articulate something that you'd like to do. And I would love to work in education, honestly. I just have not had the time. But I think because when you impact a child young, you impact a generation, you impact the world, you know. And as I said at the start of this interview, I still remember what my teachers used to say to me. It's amazing the impact and the value of the words. And so it's really important, parents out there, that you're aware of where your children are and what is being said around them, because they're just very malleable, you know. And so as we're just such an honor to have you. I don't want this interview to end, but hey, great conversation. Indeed. Susie, the Better Woman community would look back on this interview. They would remember you because you're just a class act all by yourself. So kindly share some tips that you would want to leave with us as a community now, please.
Yeah, and thank you for that, and for having me here. What I would say is the first tip is be courageous, because this is my first live, Bella. You know that. You're my first live in anything, you know, in terms of any social media platform. And I was thinking, what exactly is this? What am I doing? I was nervous about it. But I thought to myself, be courageous. So I'm going to tell the Better Woman community, be courageous as the first thing. And then the second thing I'm going to say is dare to believe that you can, because you can. It's just that. You've got potential and you can. You've got something to offer. Therefore, just dare to believe in yourself and do something about that. And the third thing I'm going to say is study to show yourself approved. The reason is because, of course, I'm a teacher. I'm going to say something about studying, but it's also because when you study and when you open your mind to different things, then you're able to get that courage that I'm talking about, because you'll be thinking, actually, I know a bit about what I'm supposed to be doing. So study to show yourself approved. Yeah, and then go for it.
Thank you. Guys, please let's give Susie some hearts. So be courageous. And I think that really aligns with us as a community, because courage is one of our 5 C's for abundance. And guys, evolve on a daily basis. Do your 1%. Evolve just 1%. Just aim to improve yourself by 1% daily, and you will get there. Above all, Susie, we're proud to have you. Thank you. The hearts are for you. My community loves you. People love you here. Your students are going to one day have a look at this interview and say, yes, that's my teacher. That's my mentor. Thank you for the work you're doing with the next generation. And we're really, you have our blessing over your work. Thank you so much for gracing our hot seat on a Thursday. This was an amazing Thursday Night Live.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Bella.
You're most welcome. Thank you. Oh, that's Samantha. There we go. You've got a student there. Hey. Thank you, guys. Have an amazing rest of the week, and be courageous. Dare to believe and study.